my name is Tanya Maslak. My background is in systems biology. I'm a trained marine biologist. I transitioned to industrial and work psychology, which is just another way of saying I went from wearing a bathing suit to wearing something like this on a regular basis. And instead of studying life under the sea, I was studying people like you and how you treat your friends and colleagues at work. From there, I transitioned, believe it or not, to tech product development. It was actually a pretty seamless transition. And that's what I've been doing now for the past 7 years. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Johanna Shabalenko. Wow, this is really working for me. Out of college, I started working for a little startup called Facebook. There was about 100 people at the time. I graduated out of Harvard and everyone was going into investment banking, decided to rip up that contract and drive across the country with no money or job and work for this startup that was competing with MySpace at the time. Worked there for 9 years in various roles, built out their operations team, their India office, worked in business development, and then now I'm working at a startup because it has a very similar mission, which is to reveal kind of ground truth called Premise Data. What we do is we're a data analytics platform that we use ordinary citizens on the ground with their Android devices who capture data. When they go to the market, they capture the price of a tomato and submit that data. We pay them for that data capture, so they're making 20 cents, which adds up a lot when they're taking a bunch of photos in these markets. We sell that data to the World Bank and the United Nations and the World Food Program. They use that data to make investment decisions and decisions on aid allocation to give back to these communities. In a nutshell, that's what we do at Premise Data, and I'm there as their VP of Growth, and that's where I'm at.
See if we can help each other out. Can you hear me fine? Oh, yeah.
No, it's not.
So my name,
No.
Okay, so maybe it's not working perfectly. Maybe hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Horizon. My name is Eduardo. I actually chose technology very early on in my youth. My mom had open heart surgery and I was so intrigued by the whole process that I decided I want to design pieces to put in the human body to help people. So I determined that when I was like 14 or 15, and I have been in tech ever since, I suppose. Most recently, I was at Google for quite a long time, and I have been at Facebook now for 5 years. I had a team that does research and development into new technologies, and that's what I do in a nutshell.
Okay, so to get started, what I'd be curious about is how do you define leadership, and particular for leadership for you as a woman? Is it different? Is it the same?
I don't know. Yeah. What is that? I got the mic, I'll get it started. I don't think there is a difference in leadership between man and woman per se. I think the traits of a good leader are genderless. I think you need to be compassionate, you need to be articulate, you need to inspire, you need to own your message, you need to give hard feedback, and all of those things. I think what's different for me as a woman and what I've learned throughout the journey of being in leadership, I didn't start that way. I didn't set out to be a director or anything like that. I was just curious and I wanted to be an engineer. And somehow I found myself here. But it's not somehow, it's actually throughout the process of finding who I was and finding what I was good at. And in terms of what makes the difference between women and men, for me particularly, in my experience, is kind of the realization of having your brand And that's something that I didn't really quite realize before, but that's very important and something that sometimes people just take for granted or really don't pay attention to. And it hasn't been until, I want to say the past 5 years that I realized that a leader is a leader in your own 24/7. I remember when I was at Google, we had the Avon CEO at the time come in, and she gave us this talk, and it just struck me as, you know, I'm so casual and I'm easygoing and I just do whatever. But when you start being in a leadership position, everything you do matters. You gotta be on 24/7. You just can't be off. So for me, that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you are leading an organization and what you do matters. And you have to be mindful and conscious and be deliberate about your brand and how you lead.
I agree that there is no difference between men and women if you're evaluating merit. So in every organization, we've tried to build a culture of merit-based leadership. You get the job done, you get promoted. I end up with, right now my team is, my leadership team is all women. And that's not because I consciously picked women, it's because they outperform men. What I will say as a difference between men and women is that men are constantly asking for the next thing. They're constantly asking for like their next promotion or when am I going to get a raise? And women are much more afraid to ask for that. And so the consequences of that is that the men tend to get more attention as a result. So if we were to change the tide, if we were to change the story, just encourage your female leaders to ask for the things they want and be direct about it. And that's what I encourage my teams to do, because certainly women are much more timid. They try to they say my actions speak for themselves and my performance speak for themselves, but then you'll see the man who is performing at a much lower level who would have no problem coming up and saying, when is my next promotion, or I deserve this. So that's kind of been the only difference that I've seen. But in general, in terms of performance, there is, you judge people based on their merit.
So I'm gonna be the black sheep for a second. I would argue that performance, at least for leadership, is very different than performance at the individual contributor level. So I've been on teams and all my life, and I think we all have, where we're side by side with someone who is just amazing. And then they've been promoted to a manager level and they suck. And then they get promoted again and they suck more. I've been in organizations where I've been responsible for that level of suck, like 3 levels into the director level or higher. And that is a massive problem when you start getting to 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people. So what I would say is, especially for women, I'll ask you guys all to think about one question really quick here, is I want you to think about someone you've worked with or you played a sport with, or they were a coach or a mentor, maybe it was a parent, I don't care who it is, but just put someone in your mind right now that when you interacted with them at some level, they were a mentor, a coach, or some boss, whatever. I want you to think of 1 or 2 words that would describe these people. They brought out the best in you every single day. Just think about this for, it should take you 20 seconds max. And hold on to 1 or 2 of those words. Now I'm going to ask you a second question. Think about the opposite. Someone that you know, where all you want to do is steal the stapler and take it home. Or just see how many pencils, when we had pencils, you could just see if anybody missed them. Or you were going to walk out with 20 iPads if you had to do it. Just someone who just you did not want to come to work. Does anybody want to share their word for the first part of that question?
Encouraging.
Okay, encouraging. What else?
Accepting.
Inspiring, accepting. One more?
Listening.
Okay, humble listener. What about the other side? Trust? What about the other side of that equation?
Egotistical.
Okay, I think you guys all heard that last one. Self-serving, so my point, is there a word or words here that you guys recognize that you're not hearing on either side?
Mean.
Mean, okay, what else? Is anyone hearing they were great at programming in Python? They really knew how to use the VLOOKUP formula in Excel. No, and that's where I see leadership. Now, when you thought of those things, you might have thought of women or you might have thought of men, and this is where I would agree with my colleagues up here, is it doesn't matter what your gender is. When you're thinking about these people, you might have thought of men or women. But these are the things that matter when you start leading people, whether you're a first-time manager or you're a CEO. Those are the things that matter. And what starts to happen as you climb that ladder is when you have a hard conversation like firing someone. I had to fire 2 people in 6 months, and one of them was someone that I came on with as a peer. I was sick for months before I had to do that. Like, no joke, I knew it was coming for 8 weeks and I probably wanted to throw up 20 times. So my point with that is, like, I didn't come at that conversation with, well, let me show you how well I can code. I was digging into a very different skill set. And so I think, I will say in my personal experience only, in 20 years of working, I've had more women that exhibit those skills, whether because they came naturally or because they worked at them because they came naturally. But they weren't afraid to use the skills that they had as a leader because they were skills we were using in our friendship circles, in our familial circles, and so we just used them in our work circles.
I saw that. Okay, great. Thank you. And I love what all of you shared, because I would also say the same, working with a lot of senior leaders and particularly women leaders in organizations where it's easy to say, you know, this is because this person's a woman or this person's a man. And ultimately, I think we have many lessons we can learn from each other, right? That go beyond the gender, and we can become teachers for each other. So I think when we think about conscious leadership, we have that opportunity. And I would suggest that's beyond leadership, right? It's how do we open and learn and grow and be able to be present and mindful with whoever is right in front of us. And so I agree with all of you. I think it's easy to point one direction or the other. And actually the bigger question is, you know, really, what does the world need in terms of leadership? What are we bringing forward? And how are we supporting each other, women as well as men? So what I'd like to do is ask specifically, I'm not doing email, just in case anybody's wondering. My questions are on here. You're like, excuse me, is she checking email while she's doing the panel? Okay, so the next question that I have is, how has the technology landscape changed with more women leaders? So in particular, what have you seen? Maybe you haven't seen as much. Maybe you've seen one or two particular things. So I'm just curious, anybody want to jump in?
So, you know, I would argue that we're seeing more conversation about women in leadership positions because it's kind of a hot topic. But when you read a statistic like, 41% of the women who happen to be in tech are leaving within a decade of being in tech, well, that's total crap, right? I mean, it's a massive bleeding of the system. And we already all know we can't afford that from a country perspective. So I don't know if it's because the media is bringing more attention that we are like, oh yeah, there's more women leaders. I don't really know that for certain. So I can't say that I even agree that there's more women leaders. What I will say is that even the ones that we have, what's interesting that I've noticed is they'll get to a certain leadership position and become fearful to do the things they know are necessary to support the ones in the pipeline. And I'll give you a very specific example. Imagine, and some of us may not have to imagine, you go through an organization and you take a couple times in your history there to stand up or do something of merit that is outside of your own job. Namely, you find someone, recruit them into the company, people think you're awesome, whatever. And you get promoted, but you're walking on kind of eggshells all the time because you do see around you that there's a lot of lip service to, quote unquote diversity, right? And then you get into a leadership role and it was hard earned. And you don't want to lose that. So what do you do when you're around the table, conscious leadership practices, and you see some slips in either what people are saying, or even the stack of resumes that are in front of you, or there's just so many things we could talk about. What do you literally do? What do you do? And these are the very actionable things that I think, and I don't know, women are being fearless about, because when they get to those positions, they were so hard earned. If you're not Sheryl Sandberg, at what point are you willing to risk your job to make sure that 2 or 3 other women who may not be perfect fits for that new role, but have the potential, and that you and your colleagues could support them in their professional growth? And that's where I would say I don't actually know that things have changed much. When I was in biology and doing research, I didn't see anything much different than what's happening in technology, and that was, 15, 17 years ago. So I don't know that's what's changed. I think it's just a hot topic, so a lot of people are talking about it. And in my world, it's kind of like when people talk about shark attacks. And they're like, oh my God, there's 20 attacks this year, there's so many. And I'm like, there were 18 last year. And it's just because all of a sudden it's cool and you get to see a picture on social media. 10 years ago, you didn't see everybody getting chomped up by the shark because nobody was taking pictures of it. So I don't know, and that's all I got, so.
I think my experience is a little bit different. I grew up in this Sheryl Sandberg era in my career where, women were treated equally, especially at Facebook, right? I will say the difference that I've seen in my business development and partnerships role, I've had to interact with a lot of different industries across the globe. And quite honestly, I won't name the industries, but some of them I would basically be dealing with old white men. And they would look at me and think that I was somebody's assistant, right? And it was a journey in improving myself and earning their respect. And so I think our influence as women in tech is that we're setting a course for other industries and showing them what it is like to be a woman in a leadership position and actually be their counterpart on the other side of the table. They need to, answer to you, and they need to sign this deal with you, and there's nobody else. So I think our influence is that we play that role, and we are, forging a frontier for women in tech, and it might start with the tech industry, but it's bleeding out to other kind of legacy industries where, they have those roles because they've been in the industry for 30 plus years and they inherited it, and it's less because of merit. So I think that's our influence, and so far I've been seeing that we are making a difference. People are turning their heads, they're realizing women in tech, it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your color. If you're able to do it and you're able to get the deal signed or the job done, then you're worthy of being in that position. And so I think that's been the difference, and hopefully that trend continues.
So I'm laughing because Johanna and I used to travel a lot together for work. So I've been in some of those meetings where we show up and, we're the Facebook contingency. Don't look for anybody else. Here we are. We're here to close the deal. I'm kind of in between in terms of, I started my career, in 93. So, and I worked in a factory in North Carolina with I'm from Puerto Rico, so imagine that. Puerto Rican in North Carolina, second shift foreman, that was me, 24. So I've been through the whole gamut of sexism and I mean, I won't even share some of the more horrific stories that have happened. But I have seen an evolution in terms of, especially in the US, I think as you step out in the global marketplace, I think things are still not, I mean, even here, things are industry dependent and depending on what you're dealing with. So it's not as it appears. I don't think it has progressed as much as we would like to think. I think I'm glad that the conversation is happening, but I don't think that enough has happened. And I have to agree with Tanya that, you know what I've noticed now that I'm in this like higher leadership position, there's not a lot of me around. And I work in a company where Sheryl Sandberg works, right? But you can't make up the numbers. Like they're not there. The pipeline, and what's happening is we have this influx of women. And I don't know if you've heard the Harvey Mott Dean, who has done wonderful things for the program there. But the statistics are not good. We're losing them. And I think we're worse off now than we were in the 90s. There were more women in the workforce that I remember when I started than there are right now, especially in leadership positions. So having a conversation is important. How have we shaped? I don't think we are done shaping technology because we're simply not there in numbers. And guess what? The market, the people that are making the decisions to buy products, is known that it's basically the females in the household. So we are creating products for the population that's not represented. So that to me is a big problem and something that, you know, I want to help solve. So my call to action to you is, what can you do? What can you do to bring another female along? What kind of interventions can you do? When I have somebody at work come to me and say, you know, I just had my second baby and I'm having all these issues and this and that, what can I do to actually keep that person at work? What can I brainstorm with them in terms of providing them maybe advice of how I've been able to manage? I have a husband that's a doctor and he's on call all the time. And I have this job where I travel all the time. What are the things that I have been able to do to be able to manage that situation with a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old? So my advice would be to take it upon yourself to help each other out. I don't think there's enough of that to make sure that the pipeline doesn't empty, because we have a healthy pipeline coming in, but then it just kind of disappears at the top. That would be my thing.
Great, I love that, and thank you all for your honesty and also, you know, sharing where you're at. And I'm wondering, I think there's a personal aspect to it, so what can we all do personally? And then I think there's also a more systemic or organizational aspect to it. So I'm working on a book right now, and one of the things in talking with people about women's leadership is, you know, what is it that we can actually do, you know, from an organizational perspective. And some of the people that I've been interviewing have said things like, for every role, this is a very large organization, for every role that we're recruiting for, we really want to have a look and make sure that we've extended to make sure we have enough women that we're interviewing. You know, something like that. That's a very simple and yet actually quite profound. And I think in this particular organization, within 180 days, they significantly increased the pipeline and also the number of women, and this was in an engineering organization within the company. So I'm curious, you know, if you're really looking both individually but also systemically, what are some specific things that you've seen either in your own organizations done or in other organizations that could be some best practices or things that other people could think about in the companies that they work in? Okay, so I give you a little bit of a runway to think about it as I was talking, yeah? Okay, cool. Who starts?
You start and I'll finish.
Yeah. So our organization does have an explicit goal to hire 50-50. So we do hire aim to hire 50% female, 50% male. I guess what I will say is that, again, like I go back to merit-based, like, you know, the same reason I don't want to put numbers against hiring women versus men. Like it feels like that's a cop-out. Like what I want to do is hire the best and brightest people I can find, and whether they're men or women, let the numbers be. So in terms of like support, so as a company we do that, but in terms of how I support my female colleagues, we do, you know, I'm part of one, and whether you call it a lean-in group or something else, there's across, you know, people in your category, whether it's like tech or something else, in leadership positions, having groups come together and talk about the issues that you're facing as a woman in the workplace, that has been super beneficial. The other thing I try to do, the calculus changes completely when you have a child. A man just cannot really understand what it means to take care of a kid and come to work and be performing, you know, at a really high level on like 1 hour of sleep when you're breastfeeding and when you're, you know, dealing with screaming, all the above, right? Like, and so just providing the level of support needed for women who are going through that right now. Again, like certainly there are men who are new parents, but honestly, just having come out of that, it's a completely different scenario and a completely different equation. Like we try to have a 50-50 household, but there are certain things that the man cannot do with the baby. Like he and so like that is a different level of support and a different level of care that you need to provide to your female employees that are going through that and trying to be high performing at work. And so I guess like providing that level of support to your female employees, letting them know it's okay to go out and have a life and have children and still be successful in the workplace, and guiding them through that is really important, because that is a turning point where people decide, oh, maybe I'll just stay home and be a stay-at-home mom because this is like a full-time job in itself. Like to a lot of people that just doesn't cut it, and it's not enough, and their minds are, you know, we're losing a lot in the world and in our workplace when we're not leveraging these women, and I feel like there's a huge cliff of people that leave after having children, and it's because of a lack of support and understanding at work, so providing that to your employees is super important. And what
So, I don't feel I'm qualified to share the HR practices of Facebook because I'm just not in that department. But what I do personally is I try to catch bias in the process. And I take that personally. That's what I do. Like if I see a stack of resumes and I see the position, whatever, and I have no female candidates, I ask for more so that I have a broader view and a bigger funnel. If I see comments or something that here and there, like you were saying, you know, I'm lucky enough to be in a position that I'm not afraid, so I'm like, yeah, what are they going to fire me? So, but that's, you know, it's easier said than done. And when I was 25 or 30, I don't think I would have done that. So, you know, I understand that that's not possible for everybody. But what I'm saying is, depending on where you are in your career and as comfortable as you feel, because you also have to look at your environment. You want to further your career. It's not like you want to commit suicide for every single thing. So obviously take into consideration your situation and where you're at and what you can do. But I take it upon myself to actually find those biases in the process and make sure that I'm in constant communication with my recruiting and sourcing team, so that I also educate them so they don't continue to go down the path that you're actually limiting the people that I have access to, because there's this unconscious like filtering system that happens when you're actually looking for candidates. So that's what I do personally.
So one thing I just want to call attention to, if you haven't noticed in these two ladies, is like a self-awareness. So so this, I think, is just, again, one of those critical skills that you can totally blow by and keep working, and if you get lucky, you get promoted, or if you ask for promotion, you get, well, whatever happens, you can forget that you just do things unconsciously. And so I think, I'm hearing them talk, and I'm hearing this level of deep self-awareness, and I think I just want to call attention to that, because it's one of the key skills, I think, of the best leaders, men or women, regardless. And a personal kind of account of how, how I've tried to contribute here in this respect is, I try and attack the problem from I see it's happening, like you mentioned, kind of like comments being made. But I see it as a bigger problem from the sourcing, bring them in, keep them in. I didn't always have the opportunity to have that level of influence, but over the last decade I have, and so I've just used that level of influence wherever I've been. And in my last role as VP of Product, I tried something a little bit nutty. I was having, I built the engineering and design team out, and I was looking at them and they were all men. And I was like, what the hell is this crap? I'm like, I'm a woman leading a team of men, this doesn't make sense. So I threw a party, naturally. And I steal this idea, please, because it was fabulous and worked marvelously. When I left, we had 50% women on the team, so it was rad. I asked women of influence in my network who were in STEM to come to this quote-unquote party, but I said, your price of entry is another woman who is less than 5 years into STEM. So they're at some level just kind of ramping up and learning, and maybe they've had 2 jobs and whatever it might be. But your price of entry is her. When you invite her, share her email with me, because I want to invite her too. I want her to get a personal invitation from me. And I had a waiting list because I thought, holy crap, I hope we get 10 people. This would be great. And we had a waiting list. So we had 34 people come. And it was a 2-hour program. I invited 2 girlfriends of mine to come. One was a VC who had been around in biopharma for a long, long time. And then she had wicked, crazy stories that are probably like yours that I couldn't believe she shared. And then another woman who was an MD from Harvard and now had transitioned to lifestyle medicine. And they spoke about their experiences. The program ended 2 hours later, and women were like, can you invite me to the next one, and would you make it longer? And I was like, holy hell, who does that? Like, whoever leaves a program saying, will you make it longer next time? The reason I share this story is because 2 reasons. A, it provided connections for everybody there. So women who were new into STEM were networking with other influential women in those sectors and finding connections. So if I couldn't snatch them up, then my colleagues were going to. And I knew they were in positions of influence where they would be great mentors. And the second obvious benefit was, and I was never quiet about saying this to my boss, was we're doing this because I want a pipeline of women in this company. So I'm going to have an Excel spreadsheet that's going to grow. So that's kind of just a very one concrete example of how I just kind of got mad and decided, what are we going to do about bringing them in? And once they're here, I know they'll be in an environment where they will be cared for and pushed. Yeah.
Thank you. And as a follow-up question, I'm curious how we can see our relationships with men as allies in creating more women in our respective industries and roles for women, and also women in leadership. I think often the men that I speak with are very, some are not as supportive, but a lot are supportive, but aren't sure how to support, align, work with a much bigger systemic organizational, trends or precedents.
that have been set. So I'm curious from each of you, when you think, and particularly in technology, when you think about working with men as allies, what do you got on that? Yeah? Somebody want to start? Okay.
Just give me when you're ready to go and I'll cue you over. I think again, this kind of goes back to when you get in some kind of position where you have some influence, and I don't mean like at a VP level, I mean like you're a manager. That at that point, you start trying to find opportunities to build these kind of collegial networks of men and women where there's some shared set of values. And I don't mean like corporate values, I mean like individual professional values. And this can be an informal undertaking or it can be a formal one, meaning the business stands behind you, you create something, it like grows into an organization-wide kind of network. But it can be informal as well, so that, when we say men as allies, I think, a lot of them already are. The problem is they're just, they do not experience, the same level of difficulty that we do. They just have no idea. So it's not even fair of us to be like, oh my God, you don't know. It's more of like, no, we have this shared value of we want, high achievers who care about our business and know their respective areas of discipline and all these things we bring around the table. But we can't have, 40 resumes of men. Like, I used a service and I'm blanking on the name of it, but there's a company in Seattle that created a product that allows you to scan your job descriptions to see who they most appeal to. And I ran one of our job descriptions through that service and was like mortified because all the words I was using were the words that I use at work to describe a high performer. And it's this fancy little scale with a girl on the end and a guy on the other, and you start to see like who's going to be more excited about seeing this. And that again is talking to the like, what are the words that excite women versus men? And I'm generalizing, of course, but there are just some things that even all of us in this room, an unconscious bias of our own is looking at a job description going, oh yeah, that looks interesting. And we're not like, oh, that isn't interesting. But there's plenty of stuff and anecdotal evidence of like some women are not excited about the word competitive. They're like, oh crap, I don't want to go there. Well, what are the systems, what are the languages that we're using? And again, in terms of men as allies, it's more of just getting a shared understanding of how do we speak here, how do we talk to each other, what are the processes we put in place to help people move up the ladder or laterally. Are we meeting after work to play foosball, or are we meeting after work to go to dinner? Even the kinds of activities that we put together for our colleagues at work will start to do this to who goes to those kinds of things. So I would just argue that if you work from a place of like no assumptions, sorry, the products girl in me is coming out, but if you work from a place of like, I'm not going to assume anything, and then when I put something together, I'm going to check myself again and go, like you said, wait a minute, I just chose these 3 guys because they're already great. Well, your assumption now, you've already worked on an assumption. So go find 3 guys that aren't and get them on board. Because they may be on board already, but they just don't know. So that's all. I'm sure you guys have something.
I was just gonna say that you mentioned a couple of things about foosball, dinner, and whatever. So let's face it, networking at work is hard. And then when you're talking about networking at the executive level, it becomes even harder. So I'm going to give you one thing that one of my bosses did, which I thought was great. So there was obviously, as usual, sometimes I'm the only female in the staff. So, but this guy is so into his family. I mean, we have a lot of shared values of, getting home at a certain time to be able to put kids to bed and do certain things. And he had taken over for our previous boss, and our previous boss was big on dinners. And every month we had a management dinner, and this was, you tell dirty jokes and embarrassing stories and blah, 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 and this will go on until like 10 p.m. and this was like a required thing that we had to go to. This new guy came over and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna do brunches. And I'm like, amen to that. Because I'm like, I get brunch, which I love, and then it's during my work day. So, and I bet you this happened from a conversation I had with him. I had gotten close and I said, why do all these like get-togethers at work need to be at night and all the way into? So by kind of creating that personal connection, we were able to share values and then change the equation so now everybody felt included and not whatever. So I think the thing here is like networking is hard. And for introverts, and I'm here like speaking, you know how long it took me to actually agree to do public speaking earlier in my career, and now I'm like, here I am talking to you guys. Networking is hard, it's not something that comes natural to a lot of people, especially when it comes to like peers and executives, and then you have the female-male thing. For instance, if I go to dinner with a female colleague, it's not the same as if I go to dinner with a female with a male colleague, and even though we're bonding over work, it's just not the same. So it's finding the right opportunities to make the connections and fostering that relationship, because that's what's gonna get us into a place of influence where we can start affecting change. Just like that little conversation that I had with my boss, and we were sharing about brainstorming ideas, how can we make this better? That's just one instance, but maybe that will lead into some major changes in how we do recruiting or the retention programs that we have at work for women. So I know it's hard, but just make an effort. And it's not only for male coworkers, but also for female coworkers. That networking is super important and super uncomfortable. Just get on it.
Yeah, now we're good. I will say, like, men are our allies. I guess I've been lucky enough to work with men who have been supportive. I think like the key is getting the men on your side of the table to really get behind you and agree with you before you have to like face the external partners who have like, I talked about the people who have been in their jobs for 30 years and are all men. And having, your men on your side back you. I often ask like male counterparts, like name the 3 best people you've worked with, and often 2 of the 3 are women. And just even having them go through that exercise makes them realize like, wow, women may not be the loudest or the most brash, but they're core to who I think are, high performers. And so, we've turned that into a hiring policy. And again, like whether we hit it or not, it's something that we've internalized as something that's important, just based on like our experience with who the men around me have worked with and who they've decided are high performers. So I guess my message there is that men are our allies. You just have to get the ones on your team and your side of the table to really acknowledge that and get behind you when you're kind of facing the rest of the world in other industries.
Okay, so thank you all. And what we're going to do now is I know that you've been sitting, listening, maybe taking notes, reflecting. And what I'd like to do is just take 5 minutes. It's just a short time. We're going to dip in to have a bit of interactivity. What are you getting from this conversation so far? So what are your insights, potential actions, just to kind of get some conversation going? Okay, so 5 minutes at your table. What are you getting from this conversation? And I know that's a big question.
I think I'll talk about one of them, which is, she's talking about things that are around teenage studies.
Well, I think there are different stories about autism, and maybe some men do the same thing. So we can call them feminine or masculine.
I don't know, I was just saying I was reflecting on the
The social versus individual, what it was,
which would be
like Germany versus Denmark and Norway.
but you know, of course, that's stereotypical. That's really the way it sounds like you're
I think we're all the same.
You guys are right that
Hey, can we talk about the Simmons quality? Somebody asked the same question. She's so powerful. There's ambiguous and the men all said, sure, I'll take it. I'll figure it out. It's not coming. And women said, whoops. Women would make
And yet I think our world
study on women and what they look for.
So we're actually we actually are
so there
well, being also more instinctive, speaking of but again, it all depends on how we work with my experience, my mother is
somebody in New York office and they're all
other people think you know, it's really, that's why I say it really depends on my boyfriend so, you know, it's like different people bring different well, another thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about everything is that many organizations, so there are two things. One is culture, creating a culture that's black females, sensitivities, like the emotional world and the spiritual world is at your place of work. That is a feeling, because otherwise it would be saying it's either business and cold and unsupportive, that's going to be my world, or it's home, children, emotional. So women may choose the emotional life because at work they don't like the right balance. The second one is encouraging women to be as this generation, the younger generation, during time when I was growing up, parents were very, they were very hands-off, and now parents are so obsessed that they have to
also work with
encouraging the fact that it's okay. You know, my sister's
because I was a
This sounds absolutely. And I also but we have an engineer. People getting a job
yeah, and it's almost like yeah, it's like the I think it's great that there are a lot of but there's a balance of
Okay, so let's get back together. I'd love to just hear from
sorry.
Okay, so we'll get you back together, and then I'd love to just hear, just very briefly, from one or two people. So what are you getting so far? What's stirring in the room? Yeah, say more.
Lovely things about all the ways in which we heard these three women have experiences in our own lives and what we do at our company, conversations that you can have with the males in your organization as well as your life to remind them of some of the struggles.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, who else? Yeah.
Well, we were talking about feminine and masculine leadership versus the man and the woman and emotional intelligence and just even what was happening at our table, you know, just feelings and emotions but it can be feminine and many men have these feminine qualities too. So for me, I think we need more feminine leadership regardless of what kind of body it's in.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Yeah.
I would say a sense of optimism too. I was saying that I've moved from a female-dominated industry into a company that's predominantly male engineers, and there's 3 women on the management team out of 10. But my CEO is so inspiring and truly the ally, the role model for what can happen. And I've just been completely inspired. So, and I like Johanna's point around positivity, that you've grown up in this industry where it was almost not an issue, or there was a sense of empowerment. So I'm very hopeful. I wish I had had more of this when I was coming up the ranks, even in a female-dominated industry.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, one more. Yes.
I was thinking about, Tanya, you made the comment about, is there actually more women in leadership or is it just talked about more? Regardless, there is more of us, and I'm thinking there might need to be more training in diligence, persistence, and resiliency, so that women who are trying to execute these things, you don't get scared. Because I know I got scared at a company and they didn't like what I was trying to do. So some training around, keep the faith, stay the path, stay the course.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so what we thought we would do is, I'm going to ask one more question and then we're going to open it up for your questions. And there's so much, like we could be here for hours, but we do have to wrap at some point. Okay, so what we were talking about when all of you were talking was specifically around the impact and connection of leadership with, when we look at company performance, profitability, we also look at culture. So it's a big question, but the specifics I'd love for us to hone in on is when you think about your own leadership and the impact of your own leadership on the overall company and the performance of the company. What are some of the linkages? What are some of the things that you are seeing? So, when I approach it this way, I've seen that we're able to be more innovative, and I think to the point about the feminine as well as the masculine, and how do we bring those together? And, what do we see as a result of some of the leadership that you're bringing forward? Okay, and not that you individually may be doing all of it, I appreciate that, but what are we seeing? Okay.
Okay, well, so where my head goes around this question is, first I just think in general kind of boring stats and data around where is profitability, where does it come from? And if you work backwards, you'll find, engagement of employees is kind of the root of profitability. And who drives engagement in organizations? Managers, leaders, CEO in setting the culture. And what are the behaviors that drive engagement? So you can see I'm kind of dropping down inside of this funnel, right? And there are skills that you mentioned. I don't know your name because I can't see your tag back there when you stood up. But these skills around emotional intelligence, right? How well can you manage your emotions in the face of trying to fire an employee that treated you like shit? How do you build relationships when you're networking and it's uncomfortable to do that, but you know that it's important for you in your career? Those kinds of skills happen every single day, every moment of the day. And if you go back up that funnel, I think there's a statistic that says it's, employee engagement, productivity, retention, those things in terms of how they affect public companies. The companies that have the most engaged employees are outperforming like 140% on earnings per share. Okay, that's ridiculous. That's like amazing. And they're stats. They're out there. There's lots of them. But again, falling all the way down inside the funnel is employee engagement and who drives employee engagement and how do they do it. This is how they do it. So whether it's men or women, again, to the woman's point in the back of the room is whoever it is, whether it's a woman or a man, these kinds of skills belong to all of us. They are learned. You can practice them. We're wired actually, our brain's very plastic, so if you don't have them and someone goes, I just can't do it, they're just lying. They don't want to. And what I would argue about this is that some of us are better at it than others, and when you see it in yourself, don't see it as a soft, feminine skill. Recognize it as a business skill that if you don't know how to help yourself grow in your career or move to another one because of it, find someone who can help you identify it as a business skill. Because even with the hard skills of being an engineer or any other very technically focused skill, women in those roles lead when they're leaders less with their technical skill and more with these other type of skills. And that's where they generate huge profits for their companies ultimately. It's because now they're leading teams of people that are engaged, fired up, passionate, excited. They come to work and they're like, how do we make this product better? So that's what I would say, yeah.
I think one of the, as the question was being asked, I was really thinking about this and how it manifests in my company. We're a two-sided marketplace, so we have the demand and supply side. We have the customers who are, asking for certain things, and we have to build a network of contributors on the ground who are delivering against them. And then when I add gender to the mix and the people on our team, it's very easy to pay attention to the people who are kind of screaming the loudest or demanding the most attention. And as I was thinking about this, I realized, and I talked about this earlier on, the men tend to ask for the promotion. The men also tend to bang on the table the loudest and say, pay attention to my problem with my customers. And it focuses on this one issue in the vast, array of issues we have at the company. And so as a leader, I think it's important to recognize the different leadership styles, and maybe some of your women are much more soft-spoken and lead in a different way, and to not just like do a red alert with like who's screaming the loudest and patch that problem, and to look at all the different constituents and the different stakeholders, understand like what the actual problems are, regardless of gender, regardless of who's, you know, kind of banging on the table loudest, and help bring like problems to light. And so I think, I think that's like a key to company culture and company profitability, where you're not just focused on the problems that are the loudest and maybe have like the most optics because of the people who are behind them and the gender behind them, but you're focused on the entire issue and the entire array of issues, and recognizing, you know, what to pay attention to based on different leadership styles of men and women in your organization.
I don't think I have much to add. They did a great job of kind of saying what needs to be said, but the only thing I will add is the following. If you look at the statistics of why people leave a company, very high up there is management. And a company's capital is their people, more so than their IP. Like I've talked to, sometimes in your job you have to like look at companies, maybe you want to acquire them, and they could have a great idea, but if they have a dysfunctional team and they can't produce, they will not produce a product. So, given that, making sure, and it's not the money, it's basically up there is management, and then it's culture, it's the company culture and the one. So what I will leave you with is, as you think about your career, even as an individual contributor or a manager, is what are you doing to make sure that you're fostering the right relationship so that the culture is the right one and people feel empowered and appreciated. And that's a lot of the skills that that table was talking about, and you hear too, in terms of that emotional intelligence. Especially in the tech industry, you have brilliant minds, the best PHP or Python coder or whatever, but there's a big imbalance on the EQ. And I have to say, and this is not by research, this is just my experience, so I could be wrong here, but I think we as women have a leg up on EQ. We just do, because okay, so I'm backed up by the research. I'm backed up by the research. But we do, is what we do daily, is what we do with the kids, what we do with the husbands. It just comes natural to us. And to think that that's something that's not valued is just silly. It is a skill that is important, and you should use it to your advantage. And just bring it into work, because it's going to make your work a better place. And people and companies that have cohesive teams that get along and have a shared mission, they make a lot of money. That is proven.
And I would also argue they're very happy.
And they're very happy.
So my former coworkers, who I love to death, I hope they never watch this video because I'm about to tell a story. When I hired the two women to join our team, I noticed a decidedly different culture within the team. I mentioned it to my boss at the time, because it'd probably been a few months, and he goes, how's everything going, and how's the team, and is everybody like all good? And I'm like, they're going to lunch every day together. The boys smile a lot more. They're telling more jokes, and they're just generally more warm. And I know it sounds a little flippant, but I would sit back and I was like, there's only one variable that has changed in this experiment. There's two women here. That's the only thing that has changed. Everything, we sit in the same spot, we're doing the same program, we got the same thing going on. The only thing that's different is there's two extra women here. Doesn't say much for me because I was one of them, but the point is the team was like, they very much interacted very differently, and that made me blissfully happy because they were so happy at a different level of happiness, which wasn't just about the work, Because you can sell the work, but there was a relational thing happening that was really quite awesome. So I just wanted to tag that on. I thought it's a nice extra.
Yeah, thank you, great. Thank you for all of that. And so what I'd like to do is open it up for questions. So we have about 10 minutes for questions, and then we're gonna do a wrap after that. So who would like to, yeah? Not a wrap, I might, okay.
In the work that I've done with women leaders in tech and in science, what they've told me is that the biggest reason why they leave, and they don't say this on their exit interviews, so it wouldn't be part of the HR data, is they gave up on believing that they could make the kind of contribution that mattered to them. And part of that was they weren't heard, and also part of it was really the way of leading or the way of contributing that would have really actually felt like I can grow here and I can be myself here and we're doing what matters here. I'm not fighting this battle anymore. And so many of them not only just leave the company, they leave the entire field, right? And year one, and it happens quite a bit, and actually in alarmingly large numbers, and on a trend that's not going down. And so I'm curious what each of you have to say about this, about how women and men can be shifting the attention so that these people who are incredibly valuable to these companies and to the field would be encouraged to stay because of the meaning quotient. We haven't addressed that. We've been more about numbers. I'm looking at the meaning.
Hello. I think, well, it's a hard question to answer, and the reason is this. I actually went through that transition myself. I almost quit when I had my first child. I was living in Orange County, and I was commuting to Mountain View. So, yeah, I almost gave birth on the road. So not a good thing. And then I went, when I had my first child, I had this existential thing. I mean, I'm waking up at 7, I'm doing this, and then I went through a transition that, am I doing the right thing? I should find something closer to work. So I went and got myself a job at a startup, in a green startup, because that had meaning for me. And it was horrible, the culture sucked. I mean, it just was bad. And then what I started realizing, this is something that I think if I see a woman, if I can do an intervention and kind of help somebody that's at the brink of quitting, is you got to ask yourself, what is it that makes you tick? What are you passionate about? And I know not all of us have the opportunity or the ability or be lucky enough to be able to align our passion with our work, but I think it starts there. Because then what I realized through the whole process is I went and I optimized for being close to my house. And I landed in a job that I hated. So what I realized for myself is I am a working mom, and that's what makes me happy. So therefore what I do needs to be meaningful. Because if I'm leaving my kids every day at home to go to work, I need to do it for something that I really like. So my advice would be to align yourself, woman or man, with something that you truly believe on. And then that will make it so much easier. I do know that not everybody has that opportunity. We're very lucky. But as much as you can, really try, and then that makes it easier because then you're fighting for something that you really believe in. Probably that you really believe in. That's going to make a difference. And that's going to make everything else, I think, fall into place and be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I 100% agree that mission alignment in your role, and if not mission alignment, find something you're good at, that you're better than everybody else at, and do that. I think, men and women, same thing, you need mission alignment. The difference with women is that you do go through this, childbirth, having a kid, and leaving my daughter at home after being with her, for a few months was really, really hard. And I better be going to a job where I knew I was doing something meaningful for the world or the company, and something I liked and was good at, right? So that was super important, and I think that is the unique difference between men and women. Like, women have to, take that step and step back into a role that they care a lot about, and if it's not, like, that's where, I talked about the cliff earlier, that's the point where it happens, where they decide, like, maybe I would rather be home with my daughter every day, even if I'm not making as much money, because, like, my job just isn't meaningful enough. So the mission alignment is absolutely key, and if not that, if you can't translate to your job, like making the world a better place or whatever, then at least be, damn good at it, and know that, like, nobody else can fill your shoes,
I'm going to add something else into the mix, because I see this with the women leaders that I work with, is I think in addition to the values, mission, meaning alignment, I think what was underneath your question is, for me, is how do we build the capacity as women to engage with this system, organization, historical precedents that allows us to then transform it. So for me, the vision I hold, is that we're building that capacity where we're transforming through consciousness, through our awareness, the systems that right now are intolerable. And this is across everything, right? So it's almost, to me, a lot of times the women leaders that I see, and I've experienced myself being in corporate, is we say it's too hard. And I absolutely honor there were times it's too hard. And I think we're selling ourselves short. We can kick ass. And I know I shouldn't swear on the video, but I think we have an opportunity to go, so it's hard. So what does that mean for us? And what do we need to cultivate to meet that system, or meet those biases, or meet those challenges? So I think we can't let ourselves off either. And I love that you shared that. And when there's that alignment of meaning, we can tap into that strength and that wisdom that's not just us, it's our lineage, thousands of years. So I won't go off into that, but I know you guys get where I'm going. And I think it's super important we don't forget that. So that's just, my sociological side came out there, and also my economist side, but that sense of, we don't forget that. Because I think, we're much stronger than we give ourselves credit for. So, okay, over to you. Oh, you got two! Woo!
Yeah, I guess the thing that I would say in answer to your question is, and I'm going to take kind of a tough road on this one, is the onus falls on you. So, and this actually is part of what these guys were saying too, is, you kind of have to look at yourself and go, what do I want? What am I really, really good at? That moment of self-reflection is not a moment. In some cases, it's years. But you have to identify that for yourself. And I will also agree with you when you're like, sometimes you don't have the opportunity but if you are living here, you probably have the opportunity. And so since we're all here, I'm going to go with that line of thought and say the onus is on you if you are in a company and you're miserable. Network. So first of all, there's 50, 40 people in this room right now that care about the same thing you do. I'm going to work on one really big assumption. You shouldn't leave today without having 2 emails of people that you can sit down and talk with for dinner or coffee later about you want to move somewhere where you'll be supported. You can share my email with anybody. So that's the first thing. I would say the second thing is find someone within your company that cares about that value, that whatever it is. I'm not having meaning here. I would like to. I came here with meaning. I've lost it. I'm getting ready to step out the door, and find the person that can identify, like one of us in your organization where you can sit down and have that really ugly conversation. I'm about to leave, not this company. I'm leaving this industry because this is the taste in my mouth that I have here. And here's a story that left the taste in my mouth. You are the owner of your destiny. So this is why I'm making this kind of argument, is that if you're miserable and you're losing that sense of pleasure that you came into that company with. It now falls to you to re-find it. And so find someone that can help you find it. And if it's not in your company, then be okay with that. Be ready to be like, okay with that. If someone looks back at you and goes, guess what? It's actually not gonna get any better. But I know 3 people you can talk with, and let's start making a plan for you. Let's start investigating. Help me know what you're great at, or tell me what you've totally rocked at in the last 90 days that nobody else is giving you recognition for. And let's uncover what you're really, really good at, and let me try and help you now talk to a Tanya, Johanna, anybody. And so we can find those opportunities for you where those things will still be like brought to life and even recognized, and then you never know what happens. And I think we all know what it feels like to come in contact with someone who turns that pessimism to optimism, and then you're like, that's it, you're on the home straight. Then all of a sudden your life looks different. And so that's all I would say is, I'm giving kind of not the greatest love of an answer here, but I really do believe the onus is on us where we find ourselves in those bad situations, to find out how do we work ourselves out of them. It's coming.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add something real quick because we've been so focused on family and things like that. This applies to everybody. You're single, you're married, you're not married. Just because you're single doesn't mean that you shouldn't be thinking about what really makes you tick and what are the things that you want in your life and what is it that makes you happy. You shouldn't feel obligated to stay until 10 because all the people with kids are leaving at 5. You should really stand up for yourself. It may be that you want to become a great painter and you need to leave at 5 because you have to get to that painting, or you have to go to a mixer because you want to meet your future partner or husband, or whatever it is. As a single person, just make sure that you're also taking care of yourself and asking the same questions. I mean, I went through the evolution for a different reason, but it doesn't matter. It happens to all of us at different stages of our lives.
Okay, so we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Paulette. Really enjoying this discussion. I have a question about emotion in the workplace. I was having a conversation with a colleague who we were arguing back and forth talking about whether emotional expression is great in leadership and how much we have to kind of dumb down our personalities if we're going to be strong leaders. And so assuming that we know how to express emotions skillfully, can we bring them into our exchanges with our colleagues? So assuming, okay, we know how to use nonviolent communication well, we're really good at giving feedback. Can we communicate our emotions and still be solid leaders? I like this story.
So I cried like a baby after I fired my colleague a year and a half ago. I came in with, like I said, I shared that story. I came in with a colleague. We were basically hired at the same time. I was hired as VP of product. He came in as one of the engineers. And I had to let him go a few months after we came in. And I lost it after that. Like, I sat outside the room, my CEO sitting right next to me. It was sickening. And then I had to whip myself back into shape because then I had to go back in and talk to the rest of the team and let them know what had happened. What I'll say is what happened after, when I went into the room with the rest of the team, I was not embarrassed to show that I was so sad by what I just had to do that my voice was cracking. And a testimony to the CEO was, he let there be like this moment of silence in the room. And then he called it out and said, I want you guys to see how much this means to your VP of product. That this is not easy, and it will never be easy, and it's the hardest thing, and this is how it affected her. I really think that demonstrating emotion, I wasn't like bawling when I had to let this gentleman go. But I think there's certainly a powerful thing as humans that we should allow all of ourselves, women or men. we should show emotion because whether it's on the high scale or the low scale, we can moderate it. We obviously don't want to go in there screaming at people and throwing pencils, or in my case, bawling like a child. But I think at some level, and at a very biological level, and there's proof of this, is it bonds us with other humans. We are actually biologically wired. When you have children, I do not have children, but these ladies have children. Babies, there's research on this, when they learn to smile. This is a very important thing that happens when kids learn to smile, because it makes us feel more in love with them, despite the fact that they're driving us crazy. And when I say us, I have a nephew, and I remember very distinctly how crazy it was. But these ladies know what happens when kids do not smile as children, as babies. There's been studies that show that the parents are blamed for their autism. The parents are blamed for their autism. Can you only imagine, after 18 months, being blamed for your children's autism? And of course, that's silly, they're not. But after a certain amount of time, parents who do not have that emotion being displayed to them from their children react in kind. They react in kind. They stop smiling, they stop cooing, they stop holding them. So just the mere act of smiling, right? This is a communication vehicle. That, I think, is another thing that we don't grow out of this from childhood. It's how do we display emotion in a way that catches on? And I think, again, I'll go back to EQ. This is also a measure of how we develop our relations with people. Is what are those emotions that, as leaders, doesn't make us non-human, but how can we relate to people in powerful ways that influence them to be productive and happy employees? And I think showing our vulnerability, I don't know what to do about that. What do you think we should do? Is a display of humanness. And I think you can do that with your entire body. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I think at all levels, it's just having empathy. And I think that's the key ingredient. Whether you're talking to a direct report, your manager, or somebody you're arguing with across the table, just really understanding their perspective and internalizing what their motivations, what their incentives are, changes the entire picture. In terms of actually displaying your emotions, I was in a similar situation where we had to fire somebody. It was a first-time manager of mine who had to fire somebody, so while I was torn up inside, I had to be strong and kind of not cry in front of her or get too emotional. So I think it depends on the context, and again, the key ingredient there is empathy, right? Empathizing with what she as a first-time manager was going through with her direct report, understanding what that gentleman was going through, being fired, and being also strong for the entire team. So I think displaying your emotions, there's, you want to take it back to how the team's going to react to it, what the team's going to feel as a result of that, and that all starts with just having empathy and being able to relate to them.
Can I just add one more thing? No, not just the actual expression of crying, but verbally say, I feel this.
Yeah, and that I certainly did, right? It's, this, I get where you're coming, they, helping them feel like you understand what they're going through, but I know this is hard, I feel really sad, this is kind of what we're gonna do about it.
Yeah, and I think one thing is the distinction between what we show publicly and not and not shutting down what we're feeling. So what I mean by that is we may make choices, like I often will say with clients, we may need to dial it down for the particular situation, but then when we step away from it, we don't deny it and not process it for ourselves. You get what I mean? Because I've been in situations where I'm like, it's not appropriate to be really big and loud and have fun. And then I'm like, I start losing that part of myself. Or to be really strong and fierce, right? Because that's not okay for whatever reason. And it will make somebody else feel uncomfortable. Like whatever our thing is, right? About what we can and can't do. But I would never want any of us to feel we can't feel it and be it. Perhaps outside that situation, if we didn't, if it wasn't quote appropriate, right? And that's, I think, where we get ourselves in a bit of a challenge, because then we say, well, I shouldn't feel that way, and then we've actually denied and dishonored our truth. So that would be my 2 cents on that, and I work a lot on that one personally. Yeah. Okay. So one last question. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Oh. The hand over here was up first. Question, and then we'll.
Some of the women that I've talked to don't want to take leadership positions because they don't want to come home and have to deal with, bring their work home basically, right? Because they want to take care of their family and everything. So when you're in a situation where it's good for you to display emotions at work, how do you think that impacts, being able to just leave everything at work before you get home?
Actually, to clarify the question, so can you repeat the last bit?
How do you, if you allow yourself to be vulnerable at work, how do you make that clean break and leave, everything that happened at work today before you go home, so you can then focus on your family?
So I got news for you. I don't think you can. I'm gonna just put it out there. I think work and life is a continuum and an integration. I think to strive for being able to compartmentalize that way, I don't think it's humanly possible. And whoever has the key to that, call me. I'll give you my number. So I think what has worked for me is actually, like you just said, is not denying myself. If I have a horrible day at work, I'm gonna take it home. Hopefully I won't take it out on my kids or my husband, but I certainly wanna talk about it with somebody. He's either my sister or my dad or my husband. But don't shy. I think with everything in life, it's about the integration and how you deal with the situation, how you allow yourself to be upset, to compose yourself so that you're able to then continue on and go home and take care of your family, but not ignore the fact that something upset you, and then work on what are the things that you need to do to make sure that either have time to reflect. I think that the big thing here is take time for self-reflection. So when you're faced with the same situation, what are the things that you can control and do differently so that you don't get either into the same situation or not. But trying to separate them, I don't think is possible or perhaps even the right thing to do. Because both things can help in life.
I mean, there are certain boundaries you can draw, but they are more like, I'm going to leave, conscious choices, like I'm going to leave work every day at 5 p.m. because I want to get home and be with my kid. But certainly, if you have a 50-50 partnership, and before I had a family with my friends, I need to talk about what happened during my day. And if I spend the majority of my hours at work, then that's what we're going to end up talking about. And that's okay. That's who you are and what you do. But I think at the end of the day, it's your conscious choice whether to draw that boundary or whether to let other people in. And that's a decision we can make. And so, for me, the boundary that I decided to draw was I leave work at 5 p.m. to be home with my family, and then I do share if I'm upset or, something great happened at work with my family and my friends. And yeah, I think you can decide where to draw that line.
I depend on the app Calm. But in all seriousness, I haven't figured out the compartmentalized program. I bring it home. But in all seriousness, I find ways to like bring the calm inside of me. There's like, I practice meditation, I'll do whatever exercise, but in a way to kind of manage that level of angst or unproductive stress. I find ways to do that are as positive as they can be without them constantly being kind of a negative. So that's for the positive and maybe not so positive emotions that I might bring home from work. That's me, I apologize.
That's okay. The only other thing I would add is the I know we have some meditators in the room, and I'm a long-time mindfulness practitioner, and that for me gives me the ground to be able to work with, the emotions in a skillful way and to be more at choice. So, whatever contemplative practice or way to be able to have that support us so that we can have a little more space inside and bring that space out to the world. I find that I can digest and metabolize emotions and situations a little bit easier. So I would always suggest if it resonates at all, and I've got several apps and that support me in that, and I'm happy to share that as well. But those practices are really important. So. Okay, so I know we could go on, and I'm also aware of time, and I know for some people you might have parked in the parking structure where you need to be back by 8, depending on which structure you park in. So what I'd like to do is first thank our amazing and stunning panelists. And thank you for your wisdom and your authenticity and your vulnerability, because I appreciate what it takes to be up here, so thank you. And I also want to thank everybody here for bringing yourselves here, and also the work and the wisdom that you bring to the world. And I wish we had more time to share, and I also know we have the time we have. So as a way to wrap up, what I'd like to do is just have each of you connect in with a truth, a piece of wisdom, or an action, or an action that you might take from this evening. And really take the time to celebrate yourselves today, and as women and also as men with International Women's Day. And may you take your wisdom and your truth out to the world. So thank you, everybody, and we'll stay here to answer questions. And we hope to see you in upcoming events. Check our website, and we also have a couple of events coming up each month. We have them. So thank you, everybody. Be well.